It's time for the Rider Dynasty podcast. Let's go! Welcome to the Rider Dynasty podcast with Ryan Bickerstaff, JJ Wenner, and your host, Michael Kloss.
Hello, Riders, and welcome to the Rider Dynasty podcast. We have got such a great show for you today. I am your host, Michael Kloss, and as always, joining me are some of the most knowledgeable guys in the business. They are my partners. Say hello to Ryan Bickerstaff. Hello, Ryan.
Hey, how's it going?
And JJ Wenner.
Hey, Michael. Hey, Ryan. What's going on, guys? I'm excited to be here today and ready to talk about the NFC North.
Yes, and as said, we are deep into our division previews. We're going to jump right in because we know that's what you want to hear. We're looking at the NFC East last time, and now, like you said, we're transitioning into the NFC North. Right, Ryan? I think that you like that division a little bit, and I know you know how to talk about them.
Yeah, NFC North's home of my favorite team, the Detroit Lions, who I unfortunately do not have winning this division this year. I think they're about a year out from that. I actually have, if we're talking about league division winners and losers, I actually have the Chicago Bears taking the North this year. I just think they have the best defense in the division. Their run game is going to be an improvement over last year. And I think Trubisky is going to take a step in year 3 to be a better quarterback. And the team I have losing in the North is, shockingly, the Minnesota Vikings. I think their defense is falling off from what it was a couple years ago. And their offense really hinges on that run game, where if Dalvin Cook can't stay healthy, Kirk Cousins isn't the type of quarterback that can carry that team to win the division on his back. So what do you think, JJ?
You know, I like your new word, runges, which is a mix of running and hinges. I might actually start using that. Kind of reminds me of the Seattle grunge days, listening to some good grunge music. But I personally have Green Bay winning this division. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have an outstanding year, along with Devontae Adams. Matt LaFleur hopefully will establish some type of running philosophy, which was severely missing under the last few years of Mike McCarthy. So I see them winning this division. Coming in last, I'm sorry to say, Ryan, are your Detroit Lions. I don't believe in Matt Patricia. I don't believe in coaches from the Bill Belichick tree, except for Bill Belichick. Anybody that comes from that tree is just a bunch of nuts. Michael, where are you at with this division?
You know, I tend to agree with you, JJ. I really believe just kind of in the power of Aaron Rodgers, and I know we'll get into it a little bit later. I think that two-headed, running back tandem of Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, more Aaron Jones, will really get the Green Bay Packers offense, in a balanced spot. So I like the Packers to win that division. I'd really like to see what the Detroit Lions can do. It's gonna, what do we say? Hinge? What was the word, Ryan? It really will hinge on Kerryon Johnson and what he can do and what Darrell Bevel does. I would love to get right into our division previews. I would love to tell you, of course, we're at rideordynasty.com. That's our website. You can also follow us on Twitter. Our handle is at rideordynasty. We invite you to interact with us there and give us a follow. Now,
So
I
what
might.
we're gonna. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
No, JJ, please tell us how this is going to go.
So we're going to be taking a look under the hood of the NFC North. We're going to discuss all of the fantasy relevant players on each team. And then each of us will highlight during that discussion one rising star, one fading star, and one player that you can consider a sleeper just to keep your eye on.
So start us off, because we would love to start with the Chicago Bears. And what we'll do, like JJ said, kind of go from quarterback, running back, wide receivers, and tight end. So start with the Chicago Bears, JJ.
All right, so starting with the Chicago Bears, we have Mitch Trubisky. Mitch Trubisky had a solid year last year. I'm not a huge fan of his, so I actually don't want to say too many bad things about him. Are either of you Trubisky fans?
I actually have Mitch Trubisky as a borderline QB1 this year. I have him ranked currently as my QB 13, and I think he has upside to break into the top 10 this year. He showed a lot of mobility, and I think he improved throughout the season last year too. I think that under Coach Nagy that Trubisky is getting the coaching he needs to be a really good NFL quarterback, and I actually really like him as a fantasy option.
You know, I like the system, and I think that whenever a dynasty player walks into their evaluations and they take everything into account, the system should definitely be among the top evaluations there. With Matt Nagy's offense, there are a ton of weapons, and I don't think that they're asking Mitch Trubisky to do too much. You know, we're going to go through some of those fantasy relevant players, but there are a lot of them, and as you look through different teams and different divisions, obviously we're still focusing on the NFC North. The interesting part about the Chicago Bears is Trubisky might be the player to own there, just because it might be difficult to pinpoint which receiver that you want or which running back. I think that that's definitely a point to consider as you go through your evaluations of what a quarterback can be. And I do have him at least in the top 15, then maybe even better going forward, just because of all his weapons.
Yeah, I'm actually excited about some of these weapons, to be honest. David Montgomery, I have as my rising star. Howard last year had 250 carries, and I think Monty is going to be in store for a bulk of those, and he can do so much more with them than what Howard was able to do. I do think that Mike Davis coming in hurts David Montgomery's worth, but I think you should definitely place a chip on David Montgomery and get him on your team.
Yeah, I really like David Montgomery coming into the NFL as a rookie. He was my number 2 running back prior to the draft and stayed that way after the draft. But a player I'm looking at in the Chicago backfield is Mike Davis. They brought him in from Seattle. He looked really good as like the basically running back 3 in Seattle last year. And he had a 4.6 yards per carry, caught 34 passes. I think I actually have him down as my sleeper. Mike Davis is a name to keep an eye on. Chicago has all the makings right now for like a 3-headed monster at running back, and I think he's a name that you shouldn't forget about. So who do you have, Michael, for running backs?
Interesting that you say that, because I know that you were itching to get at my rising star there.
Yes, I was.
I am happily invested in Tariq Cohen. I think that mismatch comes to mind when you're looking at him out of the backfield. It was interesting watching a lot of tape last year because of what felt like Jordan Howard's ineffectiveness, that they wanted to get Tariq Cohen the ball on the ground. But he was just most effective out of the backfield catching passes. 71 receptions, 725 yards, and 5 touchdowns isn't nearly enough usage for me. I look at those numbers, and I see a spot that now with this year, with Mike Davis and, the arrival of David Montgomery, who I think is going to be a second half star once they figure out that they can just give him the ball and he can go crazy. I still see Tariq Cohen being extremely valuable out of the backfield, and he's too speedy to be matched up with some of those linebackers. I remember watching a lot of tape on the Giants game last year. He just absolutely trashed the Giants defense, which I know a lot of teams do, but still. And I think that was a game with Chase Daniel as quarterback. So I'm really excited to look at Tariq Cohen what he should, in my opinion, be over where he was in yardage, probably approaching 1,000 yards receiving this year if they use him right.
Ooh, that's a hot take.
See, I don't think so. I think that, again, he needs to be utilized. They don't need to use him too much, running the ball, because they have 2 solid runners this year. But again, wheel routes are Tariq Cohen's forte, and utilize him the right way, move people around. Matt Nagy knows how to use a running back like Tariq Cohen.
Yeah, Michael, I particularly like your use of the word forte to describe a Chicago running back.
It just came to me.
Yeah, well, it's perfect. Cohen is an amazing receiver out of the backfield, and I like him mainly because the person I'm fading on this offense, and I'm not alone in our group here, is Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson had one great year back in 2015. I know he was the darling of the reception perception, and he hasn't done much since then. He is going to receive the bulk of the targets until they find someone else who can do it. I'm going to be avoiding him in startups only because I don't see him as a long-term solution in that wide receiver core.
Seems like Ryan agrees with you there.
Oh, yes, I'm going to have to back JJ up on that. They brought Allen Robinson in. They paid him a lot of money, and he ultimately disappointed. I know he was returning from an ACL injury, but he only had 55 receptions for 754 yards. He's simply not the receiver that he used to be. And I'm taking a shot on somebody that's a little bit younger, less proven maybe, but higher upside. But somebody that.
Yeah, tell me about your rising star, because I want to follow that up with my fading star.
All right, so somebody that I like in Chicago's receivers room is Anthony Miller. This is a guy, he was drafted in the 2nd round last year. He saw the field a fair amount. He was 4th, I believe, on the team in receiving yards, but he was 1st in touchdown receptions. He had 7. And I just see his role increasing a lot, actually, in year 2. He came out of Memphis. It's a smaller school. He had that year to get acclimated to the NFL. I see a big jump in Anthony Miller's future.
And I think that's exactly why probably I'm fading Taylor Gabriel in this offense, is just because the rise of Anthony Miller. And I think that you made, several good points, but Gabriel has kind of made a career out of spending 2 years in the league with the team and then moving on. And I don't know, again, we're going to be in 2019, the 2nd year with the Bears after he went with Cleveland and then Atlanta. It just seems like he walks himself out the door because of not inept play, but, last year was the best year that he had in terms of receptions and in terms of yardage, but I just don't see, the continuance coming with Taylor Gabriel with all the other options. I don't think that they wanted to use Trey Burton the way that he was used last year. I am just, again, pumping up Tariq Cohen, so I've got to fade somebody else in that offense. There's just too much to go around. Plus, you've got the addition of Riley Ridley and Emmanuel Hall, and these are players that whether they're draft stock or picked up as a undrafted, factor into that offense there. And it seems like Taylor Gabriel.
Absolutely. Let's not forget about Patterson, Cordell Patterson coming over from New England. I think he is the type of weapon that Matt Nagy might be able to utilize in a similar way that he uses Tariq Cohen. And especially as a return weapon. Maybe that'll take some of the stress off of Tariq the Freak, the human joystick, from having to play on special teams. But I think overall they did get a lot better this year. And I may be rethinking my Green Bay pick.
They do absolutely have the potential there. So I think, Ryan, you're not too far off.
So as far
There's some
as
excitement.
tight ends go, I have my sleeper as, and I'm kind of rethinking this as we go, as Adam Shaheen. I love Adam Shaheen, and I have no idea why. I put him in this slot, and I went back to look at stats to back it up, and there was nothing. I just really like Adam Shaheen. I like when he is on the field. I like what he brings to the team. And I don't know if Trey Burton is as good as we thought he was. So I think that Shaheen has an opportunity to be a solid, maybe high-end tight end 3 or a low-end tight end 2 in the league. What do you think, Michael?
It was really interesting last year coming into the season. I think everyone anointed Trey Burton, coming off a Super Bowl catch or actually it was the pass on that Philly special. And everyone anointed Trey Burton as the new Travis Kelce, right? The U tight end that Matt Nagy was going to bring over. And it just really didn't seem like it happened. I think that he had one big blow-up game against the Patriots, but he just was not targeted all that often. I think that if Shaheen gets on the field, he's a big body receiver. I know that he spent a lot of it, injured last season. Giving Mitch Trubisky options on the field to be able to throw, he just doesn't seem to me like a deep ball quarterback. So anytime you can have a tight end on the field that's willing to make those small move the chains passes, I'm into it. I don't know that Adam Shaheen's going to be a big fantasy relevant player. I'd still probably put my money on Trey Burton, but I don't know, Ryan, are you with me or where are you at on the tight ends?
Yeah, I'm more with you on this. I recently took Burton in a startup. I think it's safe to say that he'll have a similar year in 2019 to last year. And if I'm looking for just a solid tight end, if you're going to do my usual tight end strategy is to have 2 that I kind of rotate and play matchups. So Burton's kind of the perfect tight end for me to do that with. I think he's going to have a similar...
And if you're able to really quickly, can you just recap, just rattle them off? Who is your riding, fading, and sleeper? Just as a quick recap for the listeners.
Yes. I had my rising star, Anthony Miller, fading, Allen Robinson, and sleeper, Mike Davis.
Monty, for me, is rising. Allen Robinson's fading. And the sleeper is Adam Shaheen.
It could happen. It really could. I'm rising on Tariq Cohen. I'm fading Taylor Gabriel. And my sleeper, as the guys mentioned, is David Montgomery. I think he's got, like I said, will be a second half warrior once they really get to figure out how to use them.
So, Michael, should we take this opportunity to leave Ryan on the mic alone for a little bit as we move over to the Detroit Lions?
Like I said, as we go through and edit our podcast, we might play some romantic music in the background, maybe. Ryan, do you think that as we go into the Lions and maybe talk a little bit about Matthew Stafford and the quarterback here?
Absolutely. I would love to. Matthew Stafford.
That's a yes to everything. He said yes to the music. I hope it's playing right now.
Matthew Stafford, I think I'm not alone as a Lions fan when I say I have a love-hate relationship with him. I think he is a very good quarterback, and when he's on, he's top 10. Last year he played with a broken back. It came out recently. Like, he had a broken bone in his back last year, and the guy's just tough as nails. He's been in the league forever. He's a good player, and he has gotten Detroit to the playoffs before. He hasn't won there yet, but I think he is the type of quarterback that can, if he has the right pieces around him. And you know what? I actually really like what they're building in Detroit right now. I don't have them winning this division, but I can see them actually competing for a playoff spot as a wild card team.
Wow, that's awesome. I have Matt Stafford as my sleeper pick. Last year was a hiccup for Matt Stafford. It was his lowest passing yards in his career for a full season played. It was his lowest QBR, his lowest attempts,
right,
et cetera, et cetera. And like Ryan said, we found out that his back was broken. He had a broken bone in his back and still toughed out game after game after game. I think if Patricia is smart, he's going to let Stafford start passing more, using the weapons, getting Kerryon Johnson in space, and we're going to see a resurgence and at least a QB1 season for Matt Stafford.
See, this is where I struggle, right? Is because I think as you go through and watch, the definitive decision that you make as a fantasy dynasty manager is you're trying to decide, is this the beginning of the end or is it a hiccup, right? Because you mentioned lowest yards in a full season, injuries. I don't know that I have that kind of faith to stretch it out. I think that if you're a Matthew Stafford owner, you're not selling low, especially, obviously, we talk about Superflex all the time, but even in, QB1 leagues, nobody's buying, right? So you're sitting right there. And I think that you have to hold him and see that hopefully that you're hoping for that hiccup. So I would have to have some kind of backup or just a plan B, if you will, if Stafford is the QB1 going forward. I would definitely recommend that. Now, we are all, I think, have talked ad nauseum, but it's still definitely worth the conversation with the running backs. We all have good things coming with Kerryon Johnson. I know that Darrell Bevell likes to run the ball with his time in Seattle. JJ, can you tell me where you're at on Kerryon Johnson and some of the running backs in the Detroit Lions backfield?
Yeah, I love Kerryon Johnson. I'm a big believer in his talent. I'm a big believer in that he needs to stay healthy. He only appeared in 10 games last year, but he averaged 5.4 yards a carry, which is amazing. He is a solid young player, and Patricia needs to get him the ball. Conversely, his backup, C.J. Anderson, I think it was the movie Animal House, where fat and stupid is no way to go through life. He's old and fat, and it's no way to go through life, CJ. You kind of had a nice little run at the end of the year filling in for Gurley, but you can't sustain that. So if he's not getting in better shape, I'd actually keep an eye on Ty Johnson, who is a rookie who they drafted this year, to get that.
Right, out of Maryland, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So, Ryan, now, once again, I'm going to play a little bit of romantic music here. What do you think about Kerryon Johnson?
I think Kerryon Johnson's going to be a top 10 running back this year. That's what I think.
Oh, yeah.
That
was my Barry White impression, if you catch that.
Not a very good one. Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, thanks. Okay.
I'm looking at his stats from last year. 10 games he played in. He had 85 yards per game average. if you extend that over 16 games, I'm not a human calculator, but that's a really good season. Average, like JJ said, 5.4 yards per carry. He can catch the ball too. You want that extra value with your running backs, the guy that's going to get you 50, 60 or more catches. And Kerryon Johnson's that guy. I don't know. I love him. I have him as a running back 1 finishing the year. And you can get him at a very comparatively low price right now.
Tell me, Ryan, what role CJ Anderson is going to play in this offense?
I think CJ Anderson's going to be a nice change of pace. He'll give Kerryon Johnson a breather when he needs one. But I really think that they're going to run Kerryon till the wheels fall off.
JJ, you're not so much a fan of CJ Anderson here.
No, I'm not. I think if he's going to give him a breather, it'll probably be when he shares his oxygen tank with KJ. The only thing that they have similar is that they both have initials with J in it. And I just don't, you say change of pace. Of course it's a change of pace because one can run and one plots. So it's literally a change of pace every time he comes into the game. He can definitely come in and give him a breather, but I just don't see him offering more than Ty Johnson could at this point of his career.
Probably for those same reasons, I'm fading Theo Riddick. I only see him on the field on third downs. And again, the change of pace, whereas you use it as a term for a breather, it just doesn't seem smart to bring Kerryon off the field. I know that you might have to at some point, but again, looking at his 2018 61 receptions, almost ineffective on the ground whatsoever. You know what's coming. And I think that the wide receivers are better, as we start to talk about some of the wide receivers here just really quickly. I don't want to jump into it right away, but there are wide receivers that will, take over the Theo Riddick role. I just don't see him integrating into the offense anymore.
Absolutely. The rumors out of camp are that he's probably going to be cut before training camp starts.
That makes sense.
And I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen.
Now on to the wide receivers. I really like this group, at least the top end of it. I am a big fan of Kenny Golladay, but I know I'm not as big of a fan as you, Michael.
Yeah, he's my rising star. We saw a breakout last year of, over 1,000 yards and 70 receptions. And that was with, Golden Tate for half the year. Especially there were a couple games where Golden Tate got a lot of the love. What's not to love about Kenny Golladay, a 6'4", 213-pound wide receiver, big target, great hands. He's at the top of the depth chart now, and he is just the prototype that Detroit Lions faithful are used to. I'm not making any comparisons here. I'm just saying this is a kind of wide receiver that you want on your team for years to come. And him still being young, him still kind of getting into the system, Matt Stafford hopefully having a resurgence. Again, we talked about Matt Stafford having the worst year that he's had since he played 16 games, or was it back to 2011 or something like that when he only threw for 500 yards. I'm so excited to see what Kenny Golladay can do with a resurgent Matt Stafford in a whole season. Ryan, what do you think? I know you love him too.
I do, but I'm actually lower on Kenny Golladay than both of you right now. I have him as my wide receiver 20, which would make him a middle-of-the-road kind of receiver 2, which is respectable. I think Golladay, what we saw last year, I think that's more of his ceiling, and there's nothing wrong with that. Having that guy as your go-to receiver on a team, you can't really complain much. I don't see that much of an increase in targets. especially with Marvin Jones coming back, who I actually have listed as my fading star and sleeper at the same time, which I'll explain in a minute. You add TJ Hawkinson, who we'll talk about in a little while. There are a lot of good receivers in Detroit, and and Marvin Jones, for example, he was on pace for 1,000 yards last year, or pretty close to it. He got hurt after 9 games, and he had racked up 500 yards and 5 touchdowns up to that point. So he was on pace for over 900 yards and close to 10 touchdowns. That's a good season, and he's still a good player. I think he's on his way out. I think that he's he's 29. He's not gonna be good forever. But I think he still has one more good year left in him, and I think 2019 might be it. But him coming back, especially, I think is going to eat into Kenny Galladay's targets.
So where do you see Kenny Galladay's targets going? He was at 120 last year.
I could see something similar.
So where do you see him falling? Do you think his catch percentage was only 58.8%. Do you see that falling?
It's not necessarily that I see it falling. It's that this is what I'm expecting out of Kenny Galladay, and there are just certain players that I'm taking ahead of him that I think might have a little bit more upside, if that makes sense.
Would you rather have Jarvis Landry or Kenny Galladay?
Right. Kenny Galladay, because he's the go-to on his team.
JJ, Chris Godwin or Kenny Galladay?
Ooh, I would like Kenny Galladay. He's a wide receiver 1. I have him ranked over Chris Godwin.
What? One more for you, Ryan. Brandon Cooks or Kenny Galladay?
I almost have to go with Brandon Cooks here. He's sustained a higher level of play. Like, Brandon Cooks is an automatic 1,100 yards and like 8 touchdowns kind of guy.
I think I think I'd go Kenny Galladay over all 3 of those players right now. It's number 1.
I would definitely take Cooks. Cooks just he delivers wherever he's at.
That is true. Any love for Danny Amendola, Jermaine Kearse, Travis Fulgham, JJ?
Personally, I am a fan of Travis Fulgham coming in. I don't like Danny Amendola, but I think the rookie is going to bring a little bit of youth to that receiving core to match with Kenny Galladay's. Also keep an eye on Jermaine Kearse, who played solidly for a very bad New York Jets team last year. I think he also brings a good veteran presence to that locker room.
Yeah, and I actually like Travis Fulgham. I don't think he's going to be, great by any means, but I think he's going to be a surprisingly solid, depth player. And if there's an injury, he might have some flex type of upside at some point.
Now, Michael, at tight end, you have one of these tight ends as your sleeper. Why don't you tell me about that?
Yeah, it's funny because I, throughout the draft process, was a little bit higher on Noah Fant, but then when TJ Hawkinson went to the Detroit Lions, I really felt like it just gave legitimacy to, that position. He's only 21 years old, a 6'5" target. I really think that, he's just super athletic, and he's a pretty good pass catcher and blocker as well. I think that that dual threat from a tight end is really exciting. I know that he's just, again, like I said, just makes that position legitimate, and that's something that the Lions have lacked for a long time. And he's pretty fast too, so I'm excited to watch him play in the Detroit Lions and see if they can actually finally use him effectively there. Ryan, you love the team. You think so too?
Yeah, I hope so. I watched Detroit kind of fumble the ball a little bit with the Eric Ebron situation, so I'm really hoping that they use Hawkinson better. And I think they will, though. I mentioned on another episode of the podcast that, this is a new coaching regime. I think that they took him at 8 overall. They're going to make him a part of the game plan. And, rookie tight ends, they're very hit or miss. They're rarely ever like a good primary fantasy option. So I didn't include Hawkinson as a sleeper or a rising star because I think next year is going to be more when he really blossoms into a great player. But the draft pick's grown on me, and I actually really like what they have done with that tight ends group because last year it was abysmal, and it actually looks really legitimate and like just in one off season.
Yeah, really quick, really cool fact about TJ Hawkinson, too, was only dropped 2 of his catchable 75 passes with the Hawkeyes. So he's got some good hands.
All right, so let's recap.
No doubt.
Ryan, who did you have as your rising, fading, and sleeper?
All right, rising star, Kerryon Johnson, fading, Marvin Jones, and again, Marvin Jones, a sleeper. I think he has one more good year in him.
All right, my rising star was KJ, fading was CJ, and my sleeper was Matt Stafford.
I decided to go rising with Kenny Golladay. I was fading Theo Riddick, and TJ Hawkinson is my sleeper. Who is the next team that we're going to discuss on the docket here?
We have the Green Bay Packers. And so both of you had the Packers winning the division. So I'll let one of you guys start us off. Michael, give us your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers. I know that there's been some controversy around him this offseason. Do you think that bleeds over into the regular season at all?
No, I don't, because I think that he's back on a mission. I think finally he has rid himself from Mike McCarthy and he can really breathe. Reading about that whole situation during the offseason, it really turned sour last year. And I think that LaFleur is going to give Rodgers the opportunity to breathe and actually, call the plays that he sees. He is so good with his vision and his smarts on the field that he makes and extends a lot of plays. I asked you guys this question just kind of in our conversation of how much longer is Aaron Rodgers going to play? And JJ, you answered what? You said probably about 6 more years. And I think that's smart.
I think with the way that everything has changed in the NFL, I mean, Tom Brady is rewriting what is possible for QBs as far as longevity. I'm not sure how he's doing it through his TB12. I'm sure there's some
snake oil
chemical enhancements happening because you tend not to see 40-year-old QBs getting more athletic. But I see no reason why Aaron Rodgers wouldn't be able to continue to play as long as he's healthy. Ryan, you made an interesting point about Rodgers.
Yeah, I said earlier that if Tom Brady plays to be 45, I could see Aaron Rodgers play until he's 46. I think that Aaron Rodgers, ever since he went, 24th overall to the Green Bay Packers, who had Brett Favre entrenched as their, not just starting quarterback, but a legendary starting quarterback. He's always had a chip on his shoulder. He's always played pissed off. I think that he just has a little bit of an inferiority complex, a little bit. Like he just needs to get that much better. He needs to be the best. And I don't know. I think Tom Brady might have actually cursed Aaron Rodgers a little bit because he's talking about playing forever. I can see Rodgers, especially because Brady has the 6 rings and, Rodgers just doesn't. If he wants to be considered the best, I don't know. That's
moral of the story is I feels like he is a safe dynasty ad still, even if you're doing startups.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what I'm trying to say here.
Great. Well, let's look at the running backs. Ryan, you and I both have Aaron Jones as our riser. We both know that Matt LaFleur has a run-heavy system. What are we looking for Aaron Jones? I'd love to hear your take in 2019.
You know, Aaron Jones is a game changer. Like, Green Bay's offense just looks better with him in the game.
Sure does.
And I think he really showed that definitively last year. I was admittedly a Jamal Williams guy. I have since seen the light. But yeah, I can see. I think that it's going to be a backfield by committee. I don't really see Aaron Jones as a type of guy that's going to carry the entire workload. I can still see the rookie Dexter Williams being mixed in and Jamal Williams, but I think the majority of the carries are going to go through Aaron Jones. He had over 900 combined yards last year. I'm thinking he combined somewhere in the 1,200 range in 2019, and that would put him in, a solid, like around top 15 quarterback kind of territory.
Yeah, he led the league last year with 5.5 yards per rush, 8 yards per catch. I'd love to see that extrapolated, and I would love to get the keys to the kingdom there. Matt LaFleur knows what he's doing with running backs. The Devontae Freemans, the Todd Gurley's, the Derrick Henry's, even at the end of the season. I'm not going to give him complete credit just for last season because Derrick Henry was, off and then on so hard at the end there. But Aaron Jones is that better player in the backfield. I'm not going to say he's elite, but he is the balance that can strike that chord.
I wouldn't overlook Jamal Williams too much. Jamal Williams is clearly the best pass blocker of the running backs, which is vital to Green Bay. So you're going to see him in a lot more on obvious passing situations, which is going to continue to depress Aaron Jones' value. So as excited as I am for Aaron Jones, I don't see a huge leap happening for Aaron Jones this year. I think that you're going to continue to see Jamal Williams eat into his playing time, and especially if Aaron Jones can't stay on the field more than he did last year.
It's probably that is safe. I think that's safe and more like smart, right? Does Dexter Williams factor into this backfield at all?
I don't see him playing too large of a role. He might be a change of pace coming in every once in a while to give a breather to one of the other two, but he is definitely the third in line.
Yeah, I see him as being more of a possible option later in the year, whether Green Bay has an injury at running back or, whether, he's proven himself throughout the season to get better. I don't see him doing much early on, though.
Then let's look at the wide receivers and someone who's competing to be the wide receiver one, as we've kind of talked a little bit, not anointing him, but is Davante Adams. And JJ, he's your rising star.
Absolutely. Earlier in this offseason, I wasn't on the hype train, but choo-choo, baby, choo-choo. Rodgers is going to throw him the ball every freaking time he drops back. He said that this offseason, probably about 3 weeks ago. So I can see Davante Adams probably getting almost 200 targets. And with 200 targets, what's the downside?
Right.
How is he not a top 5, top 3 wide receiver this year? I just don't see anybody taking away his targets. And, as Ryan said earlier, Aaron Rodgers is kind of mental. So once he fixates on a guy, he doesn't leave that guy. So Davante Adams is a definite must-add in every league this year.
In my as my faders, I had written something down, and I think as we're talking, I want to change it a little bit. I was fading any wide receiver not named Davante Adams or Marquez Valdez Scantling. Make sure I say that name correctly. And I also had Geronimo Allison on this list. I think I'm going to drop Geronimo Allison. So I'm going to fade any wide receiver that's not Devontae Adams or MVS. A lot of talk coming out of camp is that Aaron Rodgers is praising MVS. Matt LaFleur is praising MVS, and there's been some reports that he's kind of moved up over Geronimo Allison on the depth chart. I know that MVS had an okay fantasy season. I think that he was like ranked somewhere like in the 80s because he dropped off near the end of the season. But you bet on the number 1 and the number 2 wide receiver in an offense of Green Bay, and I don't need the numbers from past years to argue with that.
Yeah, I like MVS this year, but I'm just here to remind you not to forget about Geronimo Allison. I have him as my sleeper. Look, he got hurt last year. He only played in 5 games, and weeks 1 through 4, he had at least 64 yards. His lowest receptions total was 2 receptions against Washington, which he still had 76 receiving yards and a touchdown. He was getting targeted a lot. He was making plays. He was looking like a solid wide receiver too, and then he got hurt. I think that Aaron Rodgers is a good enough quarterback that 3 receivers can be relevant because I don't see their tight ends doing anything in 2019. I like Jay Sternberger as a prospect, but again, rookie tight ends, so I really think that there could be 3 fantasy relevant wide receivers for the Packers this year.
So I actually have my sleeper as Jake Kumaro.
Okay.
I think that Jake has the opportunity to step up. Aaron Rodgers has spoken a lot about how much he likes Jake Kumaro. So I think he's definitely somebody to keep an eye on as that 3rd receiver. And because honestly, I'm not a big fan of Geronimo Allison, and I don't believe in Equanimous St. Brown at all.
No. Man, Aaron Rodgers is talking an awful lot this offseason.
Definitely.
He likes a lot of players. That's sometimes a little hard to wade through that. So I'm going to definitely watch the depth chart for these wide receivers. I want to touch on really quickly my sleeper. And JJ, you and I can talk about tight ends here because why don't you actually start it off with Jimmy Graham?
So my fading star is Jimmy Graham, but I have rethought this.
Okay.
Last year, the problem with Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers doesn't like to throw the ball short. He is an improviser. He likes to extend plays.
Right.
He likes to roll out. He likes to go for the deep shot every time. That is his greatest weakness. What's going to be necessary with Matt LaFleur is to get Aaron Rodgers to buy into a system. If he does, if Aaron Rodgers buys into a system, I think you're going to see a few different things happen with this team. You're going to see Aaron Jones become a lot more productive because he's not going to audible out of play calls. You're going to see them running out of with Aaron Rodgers under center more, which is going to help Aaron Jones and the running backs as a whole. And the third thing that's going to happen is you're going to see Jimmy Graham become a weapon again. I know he's old. He doesn't have the explosiveness, but he can still get open. He has that old man smarts that, he can box out his defender and get open on the ball. What Jimmy Graham can't do is be the 4th or 5th option on a pass route and keep running and running and running, hoping that Aaron Rodgers will not have enough open deep that he'll finally check down to him. So I am not having Jimmy Graham as my fader.
You see, it's interesting that you say that because my sleeper is Jay Sternberger because we're at an impasse here. It might be time to turn over, uh, the tight end. What's the phrase? Turn over a new. I'm completely blanking on it.
A new leaf.
A new leaf. Thank you. Yeah, you said Ryan Leaf together. That was We're not talking about that bust. Jay Sternberger, when selected by the Packers, I think that does send a message to Jimmy Graham. So we could see a little bit of a resurgence, from him as any athlete, in a competitive mindset gets pushed. I just think that, you're looking at a 6'4" player who was a semifinalist for the Mackey Award. Was it set the school record for touchdowns at A&M and was a reception machine, for a tight end. I like his ability to get him on the field, and that's kind of why I just kept him as a sleeper because he could obviously be like a Gesicki or something like that this year, where maybe it takes him a year or two, but we know that Jimmy Graham's time is, going away here, and it might be time for Sternberger. So whether he does it this year or whether he does it next year, he will be a target for Aaron Rodgers coming up in the future. So let's give a quick recap of our rising, fading, and sleeper, starting with Ryan.
All right. So I have Aaron Jones rising, Jimmy Graham fading, and Geronimo Allison is my sleeper.
And my rising star is Devontae Adams. My fading is St. Brown, Equanimous. And my sleeper is Jake Kumaro.
All right. And then I was rising on Aaron Jones. I faded any wide receiver not named Devontae Adams or MVS, and Jay Sternberger is my sleeper. So then let's finish this up here with the Vikings. Kirk Cousins signed that huge guaranteed money contract to come over to the Vikings early in the season. He looked phenomenal, especially in that early matchup with the Rams as they traded points back and forth. What are we expecting, Ryan, from Kirk Cousins coming up this year? Is he pretty high on your draft board or lower in your rankings?
Kirk Cousins, I have him as my QB 18, which really isn't fair. He should be higher if I'm looking at things objectively. But he's boring, like Kirk Cousins, you know exactly what you're getting. You're going to get around 30 touchdowns and double-digit interceptions with somewhere around 4,000 yards. It's safe. It's boring. The upside really isn't there. He's a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. He could probably be ranked a little bit higher, but there are guys that I'm looking at that might have a higher upside than Cousins.
So you mentioned that you have Cousins right now as number 18.
Yes.
So that is his ADP right now. In a single QB league, he is going off the board as QB 18. So who would you take? I like the game that Michael did with us a little bit earlier. Would you take Kirk Cousins or Josh Allen?
That's a tough one. I have them pretty much neck and neck. Let's go Kirk Cousins just because I know I'm going to get close to 30 touchdowns out of him.
Okay, Michael, Kirk Cousins or Mitch Trubisky?
Ooh. In a dynasty, I'm probably still picking Mitch Trubisky.
Okay. And last, Ryan, Kirk Cousins or Drew Brees?
Are you win now, or what are you thinking?
Yeah. It all depends. If you're win now, it's Drew Brees. But if if you're kind of in the middle of something, or you need like a QB2 kind of target, for like a long-term period, I want Cousins.
Very good. All right. So yeah, I'm kind of the same way on Cousins. I'm kind of blah. But yeah, it's interesting to see where everybody has him ranked. Now, the straw that stirs the Vikings drink is Dalvin Cook at running back.
Right.
Now, I have Dalvin Cook as my rising star. For me, If he plays in 14 games, he is going to be easily a top 15 back this season. He is a highly skilled running back who is great as a receiver. He's great between the tackles. He can do it all. He is electric on the field. He just needs to stay healthy.
Yeah, I agree. I also have Dalvin Cook as my rising star. We did an episode a while back where we played over-under, and I think the stat projection for Dalvin Cook was around 1,350 total yards. If he plays in all 16 games, I can see him attaining that. And so, yeah, that would make him even that would even give him perhaps running back one upside. But again, key here is staying healthy, and I don't think he can do it. But he's going to do it.
So you really do have a lot of injury concerns for Dalvin Cook then.
I do. He tore his ACL his rookie year. He came back. He wasn't quite right last year. He had a hamstring, was it, all season? It just seems like he's getting banged up early on. I could see it maybe hurting his development a little bit. I mean, if he returns as the same player he was, I think that this combined 1,300 yard total here is a possibility. But I mean, we don't know. And they brought in Alexander Madison, who I actually really liked coming out of Boise State. He's a big guy, hard runner. I think he's going to push for a lot of carries too. And I actually have him as my sleeper.
Yeah,
but
I do as well. And I'm kind of banking on that almost because Dalvin Cook's injury history. I mean, I do like Alexander Madison. I think he just fell into such a good spot. He was, for me, somewhere in the range, in rookie drafts, a third, fourth rounder. And then all of a sudden, after the draft fell up just a little bit higher. When we had Noah Hills on the podcast, he talked about how much he loved Alexander Madison over, other players that were going higher at the time, like Singletary and a couple other. But he just has the perfect spot behind a quote-unquote veteran that is just shaky right now.
Yeah, right now, Madison, his ADP is running back 50. So you can definitely get him a little bit later on in your draft, especially if you take Dalvin Cook early, just as a solid handcuff. Anybody else in that running back room that we're looking at?
Yeah, I actually wanted to add that I wrote about Alexander Madison back in February. I thought he was a very underrated running back prospect. And I think that where the Vikings drafted him with the running backs that were still on the board, I think that really kind of made it click in people's heads that, oh, hey, maybe we should be taking a look at this kid. Because he did see a very big spike, especially in the fantasy community after the draft. But yeah, I think Minnesota has potential for a really good backfield this year. It's just a matter of staying healthy.
So, Ryan, do you see anybody else in that backfield who we should pay attention to?
No. Outside of those two, I'm not really looking in anybody's direction.
All right, Michael, do you have anybody, or do you want to talk about your wide receivers?
Yeah, sure. Let's get right into. I know that Mike Boone is in that backfield. Is Rock Thomas still in that backfield? I remember drafting him out of Jacksonville State last year because I like that. But he
is still there, and so is Ryan's favorite player of all time, Amir Abdullah.
Oh goodness. At this point, I think I would probably avoid. I liked Rock Thomas last year. Because he was an Auburn recruit, but I think that he can't stay out of trouble. Again, Mike Boone is one of those that might be a deep, deep, deep stash. But I will jump into the wide receivers here. I have my rising and fading star that I want to kind of touch on. My rising star is Stephon Diggs, and my fading star is Adam Thielen. Now, I think that they both play off of each other here because you're probably want to jump in and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I can understand that, right? Adam Thielen had such a great start to the year. It was almost that you saw, when John DeFilippo kind of flipped the switch and then ended up getting fired, that you saw Thielen fading away. I personally think Stephon Diggs is an up-and-coming wide receiver one. I have him in the top 10 at number 9 in our rankings. I think that he's going to continue to push forward and surprise a lot of people. Had his best year yardage wise, over 1,000 yards with Kirk Cousins. I found this interesting stat about Stephon Diggs because there are a couple other wide receiver names that I'm going to kind of yell out here. But since the Vikings Week 10 bye, when you saw Thielen fading a little bit, Diggs had more touchdowns than Mike Evans. He had more receptions than Amari Cooper, and he had more targets than Keenan Allen. And I think that listening to those players and ranking him where I do, I only see a lot of upside for him on that offense. Ryan, are you with me on the Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen take, or where are you feeling?
Yeah, I actually have Stephon Diggs as a top 10 receiver. Last year was probably about his ceiling. I think he might be able to improve a little bit on what he did last year, but if that's what you're getting, if you're getting a guy that can get you, like 1,100 yards and close to double-digit touchdowns, I don't know his stats from last year off the top of my head, but I think it was Pro Bowl caliber numbers. You're
trying to talk about Stephon Diggs' season?
Yes.
102 catches, 1,021 yards, and 9 touchdowns. You think that's his ceiling? I would be willing to go a little bit higher. I know touchdowns can be choicy, but yeah, I would say he could go for 1,300 yards.
Yeah, I think that he might have hit his ceiling in terms of receptions last year at the very least. Then, but yeah, I could see a spike in yardage. But I am kind of fading Thielen a little bit, not as much as you, but I do see Diggs as the receiver that you want from Minnesota.
Yeah, I'm a fan of both of those guys. Stephon Diggs is a great receiver. So is Adam Thielen. It's amazing how even the target distribution was between them. Thielen had 153 targets, and Stephon Diggs had 149. So it's a very balanced offense. And I mean, if we're thinking Thielen, it might fade a little bit, then Stephon Diggs only can go up from where he's at currently. Outside of those two guys, somebody who I have as my sleeper is Chad Beebe, who I'm a fan of him in the slot. He is a quick receiver. I was a fan of his father from back in the day. And
House of Speed.
Absolutely. I think whoever wins the third, whoever wins between Chad Beebe and Jordan Taylor for like the wide receiver role, I think he needs to be picked up in deep leagues, and you can get him for practically nothing with probably your last pick of the draft.
Also, Dylan Mitchell too is kind of a interesting thought. It was a record setter at Oregon, 1,184 receiving yards last year. It was 75 catches, which was third in school history, believe it or not. 10 catches of over 30-plus yards. So he's a little bit of a burner, and he's fast. Big play potential.
And don't forget Olabisi Johnson was drafted in the 7th round, just like Dylan Mitchell. So, they have a lot of weapons there.
Yeah, and tight end really. Sorry, Ryan, did I jump the gun here?
Are we completely down and out about Laquan Treadwell?
I think you know the answer to that.
Yeah, that was a joke. Anyway, let's move along.
No, that was a timely joke, and I enjoyed it. But we've had actually a lot of conversations about the tight end because what are we doing here? I know that it seems like Ryan and JJ both of you guys aren't very high on either person in the room. Or maybe you are. Tell me.
I am a fan of Kyle Rudolph. Kyle Rudolph to me reminds me of if you were going to draw a picture of a tight end, especially during like the early part of this decade, you would draw Kyle Rudolph. He would be your tight end. He's not super quick. He's sure-handed. He gets a little bit of yards match. He's just a sure-handed receiver who's not going to let you down. He was the third most targeted player on the team last year. He had 634 yards, 4 TDs, 64 receptions. I don't know what else you would want. He caught 78% of the balls thrown his way, and he clearly has done enough to show that Irv Smith doesn't have what it takes, or else they wouldn't have given him the extension that they just gave him.
That's a good point.
But you're actually fading Irv Smith on this.
Yeah, I don't like Irv Smith.
Wow, you feel comfortable fading a rookie?
Absolutely. When a team drafts a rookie to take over a position, and then after a few practices, give the guy he was supposed to replace a new contract, I think it says a lot about that player.
Yeah,
Ryan, what are you thinking?
I actually, it's funny because I have Kyle Rudolph as my fading star. It might not happen this year, but I see Irv Smith being the tight end of the future in Minnesota. I'm not panicking too much after Minnesota extended Rudolph. Irv Smith's a young guy. He's like 2021. Like, he was young coming into the league. He's going to need a little bit of time to adjust to the NFL. I think what the Vikings did with Rudolph was smart. I see him as a player that's trending down. When I look at his statistics, his career trajectory, he had 2016 was really his only.
Who are you talking about?
This is about Kyle Rudolph now.
Okay.
2016 is really his only. He had like top 10 caliber kind of year as a tight end, 840 yards and 7 touchdowns, and it's been kind of just decreases after that. 2017 he had 8 touchdowns but only 532 yards, and then last year he had less touchdowns but he bumped up in yards a little bit more. I see a player that's kind of gonna find a peak around 600 receiving yards. Again, it's just I'm looking for guys that are gonna have possibly more upside.
So who are you drafting? Kyle Rudolph or Irv Smith?
I mean, if it's redraft, Rudolph. If it's Dynasty, Smith. Other players that I look at drafting ahead of Rudolph, Trey Burton, Mark Andrews.
Oh, absolutely. But we're not
Dallas
on
Goedert.
those teams right now. We're talking about the
I know.
So it's just interesting.
Yeah,
that you're
yeah.
fading somebody who you would actually draft over Irv Smith.
I think he's on his way out. I'm fading him. I'm not drafting either one of their tight ends, I guess is my point for fantasy this year. I think that Rudolph's on his way out, and there's time for Smith to actually shine this year too. After all, no football's been played yet.
I'm interested to see how the season starts, really, because I haven't really been super excited with Kyle Rudolph, and I want to see if actually Irv Smith gets in any games and if Rudolph can, earn that contract extension. Because that, JJ, I kind of agree with you. It speaks to a team when you draft a guy, an Alabama tight end, right? We're not talking about O.J. Howard here. We're talking about Irv Smith, and then immediately get a couple looks at him and then turn around to the other guy in that same position and be like, we're going to lock you up for another couple of years. So I think that speaks to Kyle Rudolph needs to get out early. Might be a early season pretty good play, or at least the direction that they want to go. So let's do a quick recap of who we're rising, fading, and who is our sleeper. Ryan, would you start us off for the Minnesota Vikings?
Yeah, rising, Dalvin Cook, fading, Kyle Rudolph, and sleeper, Alexander Madison.
All right, and my rising star is Dalvin Cook as well. I'm fading Irv Smith, and sleeper is Chad Beebe.
All right, you heard from me. I was rising on Stephon Diggs, and unfortunately, because of the rise there, fading Adam Thielen because he won't live up to your wide receiver one expectations, and Alexander Madison was also my sleeper. Well, thank you guys so much for contributing. I thought we had an awesome conversation about the NFC North. Of course, for our latest rankings and Dynasty football content, we would love it if you would visit us at rideordynasty.com.
And just remember, you can listen to us on Podbean, at our YouTube channel, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts.
Of course, you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, your favorite podcast app. Also, make sure if you do give us a review, we will read it here on the pod. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Have a great night.
Catch you in the next one.
Boat drinks.
Thank you for listening to the Ride or Dynasty podcast. If you have enjoyed the pod, please subscribe and leave us a rating and review on iTunes. Follow the guys on Twitter at Ride or Dynasty. You can follow JJ at JJ Winner. Ryan is at BixPixFFB. And Michael is at Michael S. Kloss. Check out our website, rideordynasty.com. And remember, we have your back.